We've all heard that roadmap, haven't we? Go to school, get a good job, save your money.
Right. Invest for the long term. It's the standard advice.
Exactly. It sounds so sensible, almost.
Yeah.
Safe. But what if that advice is, well, kind of outdated?
Or maybe just not the only path. What if it doesn't actually lead everyone to real financial freedom?
That's the core question, isn't it? And it's precisely the disruptive idea we're diving into today.
Mm-hmm. A big challenge to how most people think about money.
So today, we're digging into excerpts from Robert Kiyosaki's, massively influential book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, often called the #1 personal finance book out there.
Yeah, it's huge.
And our mission here is really to dissect its views, which are often, let's be honest, pretty controversial. They challenge a lot of conventional wisdom.
They absolutely do. We want to pull out those key nuggets of knowledge, help you sort of shortcut your way to understanding these financial ideas and mindsets.
Think of it as a journey, really. Understanding what the rich teach their kids about money.
That maybe the poor and middle class don't. And how those insights might, help you get more control over your own financial future.
Okay, so let's unpack this main idea. Kiyosaki talks about growing up with these two really different father figures.
Right, two dads.
One was his actual father, highly educated, a government leader, but who he calls his poor dad.
Hmm.
And the other was his best friend's father, who became his mentor, his rich dad.
And what's so striking is how completely different their perspectives were, especially about money.
Totally different worlds.
Like one dad would say, the love of money is the root of all evil,
A classic one.
while the other would counter, no, the lack of money is the root of all evil. That's quite a contrast.
And Kiyosaki says that direct opposition, that clash, it forced him to actually think.
Yeah, not just accept one view.
Right, to compare them, weigh them, and then choose his own path. And he realized that process, that active thinking, was way more valuable than just, blindly following one set of rules. He saw how these different philosophies played out in their lives.
And you see that consistently in the examples he gives. One dad struggled just to save a few dollars.
I don't know.
The other was actively creating investments.
Big difference.
Or
Yeah.
one taught him how to write a great resume to get a good job.
A traditional path again.
While the rich dad taught him how to write business and financial plans to create jobs.
Wow.
And while one dad talked about financial competence, the other, despite his education, often struggled financially. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, Kiyosaki suggests a key reason the rich get richer, poor get poorer, middle class get stuck in debt, is that money is mainly taught at home, not really in school.
Yeah, most of us learn about money from our parents, right?
Yeah.
And if they were struggling, what kind of financial wisdom could they pass on?
Exactly. It's a cycle.
And this point really makes you think. Schools focus so much on academic skills, professional skills,
How to be a good employee.
but financial education, it's mostly missing, which helps explain how you can have brilliant doctors, lawyers, accountants, people with amazing grades.
Still struggling with money their whole lives.
Kiyosaki even kind of links huge national debts to highly educated politicians making financial decisions without real training in money itself.
It's a provocative thought. So the question for you listening might be, are you really getting the financial education you need?
From the usual places? Probably not.
And what's often missing isn't just how to make money. Lots of people know how to do that. It's how to manage it.
Financial aptitude, he calls it.
Right. How to protect it, keep it longer, and crucially, how to make your money work hard for you, not just you working hard for it. Which brings us to a really core rule from Kiyosaki's Rich Dad. It sounds almost too simple, but he emphasized, rich people acquire assets.
Okay.
The poor and middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets.
Okay, that sounds simple, but let's break it down. Because that's where people get tripped up, right? Thinking a liability is an asset.
Totally. His rich dad said the only rule you need is to know the difference and then buy assets.
So the definition, really basic. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket.
Like rental income, stock dividends.
And a liability takes money out of your pocket.
Mortgage payments, car loans, credit card debt.
If you picture it like cash flow, an asset makes money flow into your income column. A liability makes money flow out through your expenses.
And this leads directly to what he famously termed the rat race.
Yes, the rat race.
And most people, their income goes up, maybe they get a raise,
Right.
but then their expenses go up too, often even faster. So they're stuck on this treadmill.
And what's usually the biggest expense sucking that money out?
Taxes, often number one. Not just income tax, but, Social Security, Medicare, For employees, that's effectively, what, around 15% combined?
Yeah, when you add the employer part, they technically pay, but you don't see directly.
Right. Then property taxes, if you own a home, sales tax.
Yeah.
It adds up.
And it fuels that cycle, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Higher income means maybe you buy the dream house,
Which needs
a
furniture.
new car to go with it,
Uh-huh.
and boom, your liability column is full. Mortgage, car loan, credit card debt, you're trapped.
And people cling to this idea of job security, right? Looking forward to maybe 3 weeks vacation a year.
And hoping for a pension after 45 years, which might not even be enough.
So the rich dad's advice, if you want to get out of that race, is pretty blunt. Spend your life buying assets. If you want to stay poor or middle class, spend your life buying liabilities. That basic choice, he argues, really tells the whole story of how someone handles money.
Now, Kiyosaki's rich dad had this pretty provocative take on Robin Hood.
Oh, yeah.
Called him a crook. He thought that whole fantasy, take from the rich, give to the poor, actually ended up hurting the poor and middle class the most.
Okay, that needs some explaining. Why would he say that?
Well, the argument Kiyosaki presents from his rich dad is that while the idea was to tax the wealthy, the rich, because they understand money and legal structures, always find ways to essentially pass that burden along, often onto the middle class who lack that financial education.
They use structures the average person doesn't understand or doesn't have access to, like corporations.
Exactly, and he delves into that. Corporations weren't invented yesterday. They go way back, limiting risk for things like, shipping voyages.
Right, separating personal liability from the business venture.
But the key thing is, a corporation isn't a building. It's just a legal document, a file folder in an attorney's office, basically.
But it offers huge advantages, legally.
Huge, like corporate income tax rates often being lower than high individual rates. And the big one, being able to pay certain expenses with pre-tax dollars.
Ah, that's a kicker.
Yeah, he gives examples like car payments, insurance, maybe health club dues, some meals, even vacations if they're structured as, say, board meetings in Hawaii. All paid before the corporation's profit is taxed.
So the rich dad's summary was, employees earn, get taxed, then try to live on what's left.
The typical paycheck experience.
A corporation earns, spends everything it can on allowable pre-tax expenses, and then gets taxed on whatever profit is left over.
It's a completely different flow of money.
And this financial know-how, understanding the power of corporate structure, allowed the rich to legally minimize the impact of taxes meant for them, because they understood the rules of the game.
Rules that aren't taught in school.
Exactly.
And that's why Kiyosaki says he cringes when parents just tell their kids, get a safe, secure job.
Because as an employee, without that financial savvy,
You have very little escape. You're basically working, January through April or May, just for the government and taxes.
something like that, yeah. If you work for money, your employer and the government hold the power.
But if you make money work for you,
Then you keep the power. You control the game.
which leads perfectly into the next piece of rich dad advice. Mind your own business.
Okay, what does that mean exactly? Not just telling people to butt out, presumably.
No. It's not about, quitting your job tomorrow in a huff. It's about keeping your D job, paying the bills, the practical reality. But diligently focusing your spare time and money on buying real assets, building your business on the side.
Not liabilities disguised as assets, like a fancy car that loses value the second you drive it.
Right. Or personal stuff that's worthless resale-wise. Focus on things that generate income. Real assets.
And the concept here is powerful.
Yeah.
Once a dollar goes into your asset column,
Yeah.
it's like it becomes your employee. It works for you 24/7.
Never sleeps, never complains.
And it can work for generations, ideally, generating more income to buy more assets, more employees.
And this totally flips how you approach luxuries, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, Kiyosaki says the poor and middle class often buy luxuries first. They get a raise, they buy the fancy car or the big TV on credit,
They look rich?
but they just dig themselves deeper into liability debt. The truly rich, the ones who stay rich.
They build the asset column first.
Exactly. They build up those income-generating assets, and then the income from those assets buys the luxuries.
Ah, so the assets pay for the nice things, not your own sweat and toil.
Precisely. He uses the example of his wife getting a nice car. It wasn't an impulse buy. It was a sign she'd successfully built assets that could afford it.
Got it. So what counts as these real assets?
He lists things like businesses that you own but don't require your direct presence to run. They have managers.
Okay, passive income streams.
Real estate, specifically rental properties that generate positive cash flow.
Right. Not necessarily your own house, which has expenses.
Paper assets like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, notes,
Standard investments.
and intellectual property.
Hmm.
Things like royalties from books, music, patents.
Things that can earn money over and over. The goal being, eventually, your income from assets covers all your expenses.
That's financial freedom. So the question for you listening is, are your purchases, your financial moves working for you, building that asset column?
Or are they working against you, digging you deeper into the liability side?
Kiyosaki talks about starting his own corporation while he was still working in Xerox. He was determined to build his asset column because looking at his paycheck, seeing all the deductions, it just made his rich dad's advice click. He saw the rat race laid out right there on his pay stub if he didn't change something.
Made it very real.
But okay, knowing this stuff is one thing, doing it is another. We all have internal roadblocks, right?
Absolutely. Psychology plays a huge role.
And Kiyosaki highlights a few big ones that stop people. The first one, probably the biggest, fear and doubt.
Yeah, that makes sense. Fear is powerful when it comes to money.
He says it's fear that keeps most people stuck in a job they might not even like. Fear of not paying the bills.
Fear of getting fired, yeah. Fear of not having enough money. Fear of starting over if things go wrong.
And when fear takes over, people react emotionally. They panic sell stocks, or they're too scared to invest at all. They're not using their heads.
it paralyzes them.
And connected to fear is this idea of, I don't want.
I don't want.
Yeah, focusing on the negatives. Like, maybe you consider real estate, but all you think is, ugh, I don't want to deal with tenants and toilets.
Okay, focusing on the hassle instead of the potential reward.
Or with stocks. I don't want to lose money. It closes your mind off to potentially powerful ways to build wealth because you're fixated on the downside risk.
Right. You shut the door before you even look inside.
He tells the story of Colonel Sanders trying to sell his chicken recipe.
The KFC guy.
Yeah. Turned down over 1,000 times, apparently. Like 1,009 times before someone finally said yes. That's overcoming some serious doubt and fear. Kiyosaki says he just kept frying his inner chicken little.
Wow. Persistence. Okay, so fear is one obstacle. What else?
Laziness. But maybe not in the way you'd think.
Just sitting on the couch.
No, ironically, he says sometimes the busiest people are the laziest financially.
How does that work?
He gives an example of a businessman who worked crazy hours, made good money, provided for his family.
Sounds successful.
But he was so busy working in his job, he neglected his family, his health, and crucially, he wasn't building assets. He was just running hard in the rat race.
Yeah.
His wife eventually left.
Ouch. So, busyness as a way to avoid the harder work of thinking and building assets?
Kind of. And the rich dad's antidote to this kind of laziness was radical. Pay yourself first.
Ah, the classic advice. But he means it literally, even if you're short on cash for bills.
Yes, that's the controversial part.
Hmm.
Even if you don't have enough to cover everything else after you've paid yourself, but money to your asset column, you still do it.
That sounds stressful. Won't the creditors come knocking?
They might. But Kiyosaki argues that pressure is actually good. It forces you to get creative, to find other ways to generate income to cover those bills.
Ah, so it lights a fire under you.
Exactly. It makes you mentally stronger, financially sharper, because you have to figure it out. If you pay yourself last, or not at all.
You just get weaker. You let the bills and the boss push you around.
Right. The pressure makes you find solutions. Okay, third obstacle. Arrogance.
Arrogance, how does that stop wealth building?
Rich Dad's line was, what I know makes me money. What I don't know loses me money. Arrogance, Kiyosaki says, is often just a mask for ignorance. When someone's arrogant about money, they often stop learning. They think they know it all.
So they don't listen to experts, they don't read, they don't admit they might be wrong.
Exactly. They bluster to cover up what they don't understand, and that ignorance costs them money.
Makes sense. You have to be open to learning.
Which really makes you ask yourself, right, what internal voices, what fears or lazy habits, or maybe even bits of arrogance are holding you back?
Yeah, self-reflection is key.
Kiyosaki admits he had to consciously work on being humble, to read books or listen to tapes by people like, Donald Trump, Warren Buffett, George Soros, even when their ideas clashed with his own initial thoughts.
So engaging with different viewpoints, even conflicting ones.
He found that wrestling with those different perspectives gave him huge insights. It let him see problems and opportunities from multiple angles. Priceless, he calls it.
So overcoming these internal blocks is crucial, but then how do you actually develop that financial intelligence he talks about?
It's not just one thing, he says. It's a combination, a synergy of different skills.
Like what?
He lists four main ones: accounting, understanding numbers, financial statements; investing, the science of money making money; understanding market supply and demand, market psychology; and law, knowing about corporations, taxes, regulations.
Okay, a broad skill set. It's about creating your own luck then, not just waiting for a windfall.
Exactly. And this actually led him to create a tool to help people learn this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The Cash a Fellow board game.
Ah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, is designed specifically to teach people how money works in a practical way, how the income statement and balance sheet interact, how cash actually flows between assets and liabilities.
So you can practice without using real money, make mistakes safely.
Right. Learn different financial strategies, see the consequences, get feedback instantly. It's about learning to think like an investor.
A financial flight simulator, kind of?
Good analogy. And speaking of analogies, he uses the pipeline story.
The pipeline.
Yeah. Two guys, Ed and Bill, live in a village with no water. They both get contracts to haul water from a lake a mile away.
Okay, hard work.
Ed immediately grabs two buckets and starts running back and forth, making money right away, but working sunup to sundown. Always limited by the buckets, that's working for money.
Right, trading time for dollars.
Bill, though, he disappears for a bit, comes back with investors, a crew, and spends months building a stainless steel pipeline from the lake to the village.
Ah, building an asset, a system.
Exactly. Once the pipeline's built, he turns on the tap. He delivers cleaner water, cheaper, 204/7, whether he's physically working or not.
Yeah.
His money, the pipeline asset, is working for him. He built a system that scales.
That's a powerful illustration. Build the pipeline, don't just haul buckets.
So how do you start building your own pipeline? Kiyosaki gives practical steps.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, find mentors. Find people who've already done what you want to do. Learn from them.
Don't reinvent the wheel.
He tells a story about wanting to learn about tax land certificates, which were yielding like 16% then. He just invited a government employee who handled them to lunch.
And just asked her.
Yeah. She spent the whole afternoon teaching him everything. Cost of lunch for invaluable knowledge.
Nice. Okay, mentors. What else?
Educate yourself constantly. Take classes, read books, go to seminars.
Keep learning.
He mentions a $385 course he took on buying real estate with no money down. Says that one course made him millions over the years. More importantly, it bought him his time back.
Wow. Small investment, huge return. Third.
Make lots of offers,
Mm.
especially in real estate. But the principle applies elsewhere. You don't know what a seller will accept until you ask.
Don't be afraid to negotiate, even make low offers.
He talks about routinely offering half of asking price sometimes, just to start the conversation and find motivated sellers. You make money when you buy right.
Got it. Number 4.
Shop for bargains. Always. Especially when markets crash.
Counterintuitive for many. People panic sell when markets drop.
Right. But smart investors see it as a sale. Like when your favorite store has a 50% off sale, you stock up, right? Same idea with stocks or real estate when prices fall. Buy low. Profits are often locked in at the purchase point.
Makes sense. What's next?
Think big and learn from heroes. Study successful investors like Buffett or Trump. Remember, this book is older.
See how they think, how they analyze deals.
Yeah, tap into their raw genius, as he puts it. It makes big goals seem more achievable if you see how others did it.
Okay, and is there a final step?
A really interesting one. Teach and you shall receive.
Give away what you know?
Yes. His rich dad was a big believer in tithing, giving away a portion of his income, but also giving knowledge, time, contacts. He found that the more he gave, the more seemed to come back, often multiplied.
The principle of generosity. If you feel lack, give first what you want to receive.
Exactly. If you're short on money, find a way to give some. If you need knowledge, keep someone what you do know. It opens up the flow.
Powerful ideas. So the big question for everyone listening is, which path are you on? Bucket carrier or pipeline builder?
And Kiyosaki insists it's not about how much money you start with. That's an excuse.
It's about changing your mindset, your thinking, and then practicing.
He talks about turning just $5,000 cash into $1 million asset, generating $5 a month in cash flow. Took him less than 6 years. But he started learning and applying this stuff when he was just a kid.
So start early if you can, but definitely start now. Start small, learn, practice, build momentum.
So wrapping up, we've really unpacked these stark differences in thinking about money, the rich dad way versus the poor dad way.
Highlighting how crucial financial education is, understanding that simple difference between assets and liabilities.
And needing to overcome those internal roadblocks like fear and arrogance. It can genuinely reshape your financial future.
And Kiyosaki leaves us with this really potent thought. It's what is in your head that determines what is in your hands. Money is only an idea. Think about that. If money is just an idea, and you can essentially create your own luck by changing your ideas and actions.
What new ideas about money are you going to cultivate starting today?
What kind of pipeline are you going to start building for yourself? How will you make money start working for you?
We really encourage you to reflect on your own habits. Maybe reread some of these points. Consider the steps we talked about.
Yeah, start learning. Start small, but definitely apply something you learned today.
Because, as Kiyosaki famously says, don't play it safe, play it smart.